The sound of laughter on the other side of the glass was supposed to make me proud. Instead, it broke something I didn't even know was still intact. He said the best gift I could give him was to disappear. He had no idea how fast a mother's silence can become her sharpest weapon. I stood outside the sliding glass door, holding a homemade chocolate cake in one hand and a wrapped wristwatch under my arm. The one I'd saved up for months to buy. The laughter on the other side wasn't just loud, it was careless. Carefree in a way that told me I didn't belong in it. My son's voice, now deep with age and years of entitlement, rang out louder than the rest. He was standing by the grill, beer in hand, surrounded by his two oldest friends, Jesse and Mark. There were women at the picnic table, music playing, and the kind of laid-back joy that should have made a mother smile. Instead, I froze. I wasn't supposed to hear what I heard next. But maybe I was. Man! Jesse laughed, clinking bottles. Your mom went all out. New speakers, catered sliders, imported beer. She even got those fancy lights strung up like a Pinterest party. Yeah, my son, my only child, said, taking a swig of beer. Classic her. Always trying to buy affection. She thinks doing all this makes her relevant or something. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just stood there, the frosting on the cake melting a little more with every word. At least she gives a damn. Mark cut in. My mom barely texts me on my birthday. Yeah, well, my son, Ethan, chuckled. Sometimes I wish mine didn't care so much. Honestly, the best gift she could give me would be to disappear for good. There it was. I'd been hit harder in my life. By poverty, by grief, by years of sacrifice. But nothing landed like that sentence. It was so casual, so clean, as if he hadn't grown inside me, as if I hadn't kept him alive with 3 jobs and prayer. The cake tilted in my hand. The box under my arm felt like lead. I backed away from the door. I'm not a weak woman. I raised Ethan alone after his father, Adam, died in a scaffolding collapse when Ethan was 14. I was 34, widowed and broke. I scrubbed office buildings at dawn, fried bacon in diners by day, and cleaned motel bathrooms on the weekends. I never missed a school play. I paid for his college, community, then state. I bought this house he lives in, paid off in 15 years. In my name. Now I was 62, retired but still on my feet. Still cooking, still cleaning, still giving, and apparently, still unwelcome. I waited until the conversation outside shifted. I didn't want him to see me like that. Frozen, gutted, cake in hand like some kind of sitcom punchline. Instead, I set the cake gently on the counter inside, placed the wrapped watch beside it, and went to the upstairs hallway bathroom to look at myself. The mirror showed a woman I didn't recognize. When did I start wearing tiredness like makeup? When did my eyes stop looking like mine? I stood there a long time, and then slowly, something inside me clicked. Not broke, not shattered, just shifted. If Ethan truly wanted me gone, I could do that, but not in the way he thought. I started with numbers. How much was I spending on him every month? Mortgage, paid. Utilities, in my name. Food, on my card. Internet, insurance, car maintenance, all covered by me. He hadn't had a steady job since college. Every interview ended in a bad fit or a ghosted call. Every request for rent money was just a loan, never returned. I'd calculated love into every cost. Maybe it was time to calculate absence. The plan wasn't revenge. It was self-respect. And maybe, just maybe, it was the last lesson I'd left to teach. On the morning of his 29th birthday, I watched Ethan shuffle into the kitchen, scratching his chest under a wrinkled t-shirt, hair wild from sleep. "Morning," I said gently. "Yo," he grunted, heading to the fridge. Is there any of that orange juice left? He didn't ask about the cake. Didn't ask about the watch. Didn't look at me. That afternoon, he left for a weekend trip with his friends. Some kind of late birthday bash in Miami. 5 days. Plenty of time. By 3 p.m., I was on the phone with a realtor. Yes, I said. The house is fully paid. I'd like to sell quickly. No, I don't need to stage it. Price it to move. The woman on the other end was stunned. Are you sure? Very. By the next day, the listing was live. I packed only what I needed. Clothes, documents, a few books. I boxed Ethan's belongings with Sharpie labels. Room, kitchen, garage. I stored everything with the neighbor across the street, Ms. Janice, a retired nurse who'd always had more spine than me. You're doing the right thing, she said, nodding. Took you long enough. On Monday, the house sold. Cash offer. A young couple, first-time buyers, overjoyed. By Tuesday, I was gone. No goodbye. No note. Only a letter taped to the front door with his name on it. Ethan, you said the best gift I could give you was to disappear. I took you seriously. This house is no longer ours. Your things are at Miss Janice's. I'll be fine. Now it's your turn to be. Mom. I didn't know what he did when he got back. I didn't need to. Janice would call soon enough. But I knew the look on his face. I could picture it clearly. The disbelief. Then the panic. Then maybe, just maybe, understanding. For once, he'd come home to silence. To consequence. To a mirror of the choices he'd made. And I? I went to Asheville, North Carolina. A town with quiet streets and good coffee and no one who expected anything of me. I rented a small apartment with the money from the house, furnished it with second-hand joy, and learned the sound of my own peace. Ethan had to grow up. And I had to remember who I was before motherhood became my whole identity. Before I taught him to stand. I had to learn to stand alone. If this part moved you, drop a comment with your city or where you're reading from. It helps me know you're out there, listening. And if you want more emotional stories like this, tap that follow. Sometimes healing begins with a story. The silence after a decision like that doesn't come in peace. It comes like an echo chamber, where every moment replays louder than the last. I didn't cry when I left. I didn't break down on the bus. The pain had calcified. It wasn't grief anymore. It was release. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, tiny kitchen, linoleum floors that clicked under my heels. The walls were off-white and a little too bare, but it was mine. It smelled like lemon cleaner and empty air. No cologne, no greasy takeout boxes, no stale Xbox controller on the counter. No Ethan. I unpacked slowly. Not because I was tired, but because it had been decades since I'd done anything for myself without hurrying. I hung 2 framed photos. One of my younger self on the boardwalk in 1982, laughing with wind in my hair. The other, older. Ethan at age 7, cheeks covered in cake, holding up a Lego spaceship like it was the moon. He didn't become cruel overnight. I reminded myself of that. The distance between the boy and the man had grown slowly, quietly, like mold behind drywall. 1 missed thank you. 1 sarcastic comment. 1 rolled eye. 1 forgotten birthday. And I'd let it slide. Over and over again. Until the woman in the mirror wasn't me anymore. The first night in Asheville, I didn't sleep. Not because I was sad. But because the silence was too clean. No television in the next room. No stomping up the stairs. No sighing and slamming the fridge when the almond milk ran out. Just me. The hum of the refrigerator. The moon through the blinds. I lay awake, wondering if he'd read the letter yet. If he'd stormed over to Miss Janice's and shouted into the porch light. If he'd tried calling. My phone was off. No voicemails. I didn't want to know yet. I wanted him to sit in it. Feel it. Let absence do what presence never could. I spent the next few days setting up a new routine. Mornings with coffee and no rush. Afternoons walking downtown, where the bookstore smelled like paper instead of sweat and stress. I bought a second-hand novel and a lavender candle. Evenings with a puzzle on the table. No noise, no demands. I was finally learning the art of stillness. On the third night, I turned my phone back on. 1 missed call, then 5, then 23. Ethan, Ethan, Ethan. No voicemails, no texts, just missed calls. As if saying it out loud, hearing his own voice recorded, would cost him something he wasn't ready to pay. Good. Let it cost. By the 5th day, Janice called. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the fire behind it. The one that had made her such a force in the neighborhood for 30 years. He came by, around 9 p.m., didn't even knock, just started yelling your name from the curb like a lost dog. I swallowed, tight in the throat. Did you tell him anything? Not a word. I handed him the boxes and shut the garage. Told him you were gone and not to come back. Was he angry? Like a toddler who dropped his lollipop, but underneath it, he looked like he was drowning. That night, I listened to the voicemails. He'd finally started leaving them. The first was short. Mom, I got back. Where the hell are you? The house. It's gone. What the fuck is this? The second was longer. Okay, I get it. You're mad. Real mad. Just call me back, all right? Let's talk. I'm sure this can be fixed. The third broke something in me. I didn't mean it. What I said. At the party. I was drunk. They were just jokes. You know I didn't mean it. But I didn't respond. Because I was finally learning the difference between regret and remorse. Regret wants comfort. Remorse wants change. A week later, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A letter. Real paper. Real pen. From Ethan. I sat on my tiny second-hand couch, hands trembling slightly, and opened the envelope like it might bleed. It was 3 pages long. Messy handwriting. Scratch-outs. Smudges. But honest. Mom, I don't know what to say that doesn't sound like a kid trying to fix a broken window with tape. I fucked up. I didn't just say something cruel. I lived like you owed me for existing. I keep hearing your footsteps in the house. Keep thinking you'll come down the stairs with coffee in hand, telling me to stop playing Xbox and go live a real life. And now the silence is louder than anything you've ever said. I stopped reading halfway through. Not because I didn't care, but because the truth was finally starting to land where it belonged. In him. Let him finish the rest. The day after the letter came, I signed up for a workshop at the library. Rewriting your story after 60. It was cheesy. Maybe even a little sad. But when I walked into that room, I saw 6 other women who looked like me. Weary, hopeful, halfway rewritten. We shared stories over weak coffee and plastic chairs. One had divorced her husband after 41 years. Another had buried a son. One was finally coming out at 65. We weren't there to heal. We were there to begin. Back home, I burned the cake recipe I'd written by hand for Ethan's birthdays. It was tattered, smudged with batter fingerprints from parties long forgotten. It wasn't about punishment. It was about release. He could Google his own damn recipe now. The second letter came 2 weeks later. This one shorter. Tighter. I'm working. Temp job. Construction site. It's miserable. I hate every minute. But when I clock out and buy my own damn dinner, I feel something. Like I earned being alive that day. I read that line 5 times, then folded the letter and put it in a box labeled, "Maybe someday." The last voicemail came the day before my birthday. Mom, I know it's today. I didn't forget. First time in years I remembered something that mattered without you reminding me. I didn't send a gift. I didn't bake a cake. I just wanted to say, thank you. For everything. And I'm sorry. For everything. No requests. No begging. No asking to come back. Just words. Just wait. Just the beginning of something real. I didn't call him back. Not yet. But I lit a candle that night. A small one. Lavender. The kind that burns slowly, cleanly. No smoke, no flame licking too high. Just a steady glow. The kind that says, I'm still here. Even if you can't see me. The hardest part wasn't walking away. It was staying gone. Because every day I didn't call was a day I wondered if I was still a mother. Or just a woman who used to be one. I kept the second letter in the same drawer as my social security card and passport. The drawer for things too important to throw away, but too personal to leave out in the open. Ethan's words weren't poetry. They weren't crafted for redemption. But they were honest. Finally. And God, how I had waited for that. Still, I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted him to learn how to keep talking, even when no one handed him a microphone. Asheville was slowly becoming mine. There's something strange about starting over after 60. People look at you like you're lost, like you're a widow trying to remember where your story left off. But I wasn't lost. I was writing a new plotline, one where I wasn't the side character in my own life. I joined a local community garden. My hands remembered the feel of soil in a way I hadn't felt in decades. Not rushed. Not for someone else's meal. Just mine. Tomatoes. Basil. Bell peppers. I planted them like hope. Like proof that something beautiful could still come from a woman left behind. My neighbor across the hall was a retired jazz drummer named Walt. Tall, white beard. Always smelled like pipe smoke and mint tea. He started leaving notes on my door. Not romantic, just neighborly. Left a slice of sweet potato pie in the fridge downstairs. Don't let the interns get it. Thursday, open mic at Moonlight Cafe. You should come. Sit in the front. Bring a laugh. One night, after a long day at the community kitchen, I actually went. The mic was old. The coffee was bitter. The voices were raw. And I laughed. Really laughed. Not politely. Not for anyone. Just because. It had been 2 months since I left when Ethan finally stopped calling. That silence, I'll admit, was louder than the voicemails. It wasn't punishment anymore. It wasn't fury. It wasn't disbelief. It was reality sinking in. The free rent was gone. The constant food. The never-ending soft place to land. And I think he was starting to realize I hadn't disappeared. I had simply stopped being the net that caught him. Then came the message that changed everything. It wasn't from Ethan. It was from someone named Rebecca. Subject line: I work with your son. I opened the email with the caution of someone defusing a bomb. Hi, Miss Hart. I hope this doesn't feel like an intrusion. My name is Rebecca. I'm the office manager at Marshall Auto, where your son Ethan has been working for the past month. I just wanted to reach out. Not because of anything bad. Quite the opposite. Ethan's been showing up early, staying late, learning everything he can. He told me once he's working to earn someone's silence back. I'm not trying to cross a line, ma'am. Just wanted you to know, if you were wondering whether he was trying. He is. With respect, Rebecca Torres. I stared at the screen. Earn someone's silence back. He'd finally stopped expecting a free pass. I didn't reply. But I printed that email, taped it to the inside of my pantry, not to stare at daily, just to know it was there. Proof. Not of change, but of effort. 1 week later, I got a package in the mail. No return address, no letter inside. Just a small brown box. And inside? A wristwatch. Silver. Not flashy, not expensive, but mine. It took me 5 minutes to figure it out. It was the exact model I had saved up to buy for his birthday. The one I left sitting next to the chocolate cake I never brought outside. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I needed a watch, but because it meant he remembered. He remembered everything. The community center where I volunteered held a Mother's Day brunch the next weekend. I almost didn't go, but Walt knocked on my door and said, "A woman like you deserves flowers once in a while, even if she has to get them from strangers." So I went. Eggs, toast, lukewarm coffee, homemade name tags, and one tiny envelope at my place setting. Inside, a quote. "Motherhood isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go." I don't know if the universe was trying to teach me something that day, or just pat me on the back. But for the first time since I'd left that house, I didn't feel guilty. I felt strong. Later that night, as I sat with the wristwatch on the table in front of me, my phone buzzed. "Ethan, just a text. I don't know if this number still works, but if it does, Happy Mother's Day. No expectations. Just thank you for everything." That was it. No questions. No begging. Just quiet gratitude. And that somehow hurt more than the yelling ever did, because it was finally real. I didn't answer. Not yet. But I placed the watch on my wrist that night, the same one I'd once held out to give him. Now ticking quietly in reverse. Back to me. You can leave a house in one day, but it takes much longer to leave the life that lived in it. I thought I'd buried the past when I packed my boxes. But memories don't live in furniture. They live in the quiet places inside you. I wore the watch every day after that. Not as a gesture, not as a message to Ethan, but because it reminded me that time only moves forward, and that I was still part of it. Still here. Still building something that belonged only to me. One morning in early June, I was watering the tomatoes when a smell stopped me cold. Warm grass, hot asphalt, cheap charcoal smoke on the wind. And just like that, I was in our old backyard again. It was Ethan's 8th birthday. The last party Adam ever helped throw. There was music on a little boombox, a handmade banner that said, "E-Man turns 8, and a folding table full of ketchup-stained paper plates. Ethan was laughing with cake on his chin. Adam had his arms wrapped around me from behind, whispering, "We're gonna be okay. We're doing it." I hadn't thought of that day in years. But standing there in the garden, with my hose dripping and the sun too bright, I let myself go back, just for a second, to the time when we were 3, when we were whole. I didn't cry. I just stood still. Because sometimes the memory doesn't hurt. Sometimes it's a gift. A reminder of the love that built the foundation. Even if the house is long gone. Later that week, Rebecca emailed me again. This time it was shorter. "Just thought you'd want to know. Your son volunteered to work overtime this weekend. Says he's saving for a security deposit. Said he wants to earn his way, not fall back into old patterns. He's quiet, but focused. Whatever you did, miss. Heart. It's working." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because the truth was, I hadn't done anything. I'd stopped doing. And in that space, Ethan had finally started. In mid-June, I was invited to speak at the community center's summer session. The topic was midlife reinvention. I laughed when they asked me. "I think 60 isn't midlife," I said. "It's post-battlefield cleanup." But I showed up anyway. Stood at a podium in front of 20 women with notebooks and tired eyes. some in their 40s, some in their 70s. All waiting for something they couldn't quite name. And I told them the truth. I used to be someone's whole world. Then I became the background character in my own story. And now I'm learning how to live like I matter, even if no one is watching. When I finished, there were no applause. Just nods, tears, hands reaching out for coffee, for sisterhood, for strength. It was the first time I didn't say Ethan's name. Not even once. Not because I was angry, but because I was finally seeing who I was, without him. That weekend, I had a dream. Ethan was 5. We were on the couch, watching a cartoon about a boy and a robot. He was curled against my side, one hand clutching his toy fire truck. And he said, in that little voice I'd memorized, "Mom, when I grow up, I'm gonna take care of you." I woke up with the pillow damp and the sun too high. Dreams lie, but sometimes they lie kindly. On the morning of July 4th, I got another letter. This one was different. No apology, no updates. Just Ethan's words, stripped bare. "Mom, I won't ask for forgiveness again. I think I used to believe that forgiveness meant things would go back to how they were. But now I know. They shouldn't. I don't want to go back. I want to go forward. I'm living in a studio near the shop. Nothing fancy. Mattress on the floor. Microwave dinners. But it's mine, and I'm paying for it. With sweat, with mistakes. Sometimes I catch myself looking for you when I'm stuck. Like maybe you'll walk in with a solution, like always. But then I remember, you already gave me everything I needed. I just never bothered to build with it. I'm building now. I miss you. Ethan, I read that letter 3 times. Once as a mother. Once as the woman I used to be. And once as the woman I was becoming. And the 3rd time, I smiled. That afternoon, I made lemonade, sat on the porch in a thrift store rocking chair, watched kids play with sparklers on the sidewalk across the street. Their joy was loud, messy, unapologetic. And I let it fill the air around me. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for a call, not for permission, not for an apology. I was just living. And that somehow felt like the loudest declaration of independence of all. Growth doesn't make a sound. It moves like a fault line. Slow, invisible. Until one day the whole landscape is different. And the boy who blamed the world is suddenly the man staring it in the face, asking what the hell took him so long. The next time I heard Ethan's voice, it wasn't on the phone. It was on a voicemail left by mistake. You know those messages when someone forgets to hang up? That's what this was. Crackling audio. Wind, footsteps, a grunt. And then his voice, faint but clear, like the tail end of a conversation. Nah, she's not coming back. She doesn't owe me that. I just want to be the kind of man she could miss, even if she never says it out loud. Click. I sat at my kitchen table, phone pressed to my chest, frozen in place. He didn't know I heard. And somehow that made it more honest than anything he'd ever said directly. That week, the heat in Asheville broke records. Locals walked around with damp shirts and iced teacups sweating through cardboard sleeves. At the community kitchen, the air was thick with steam and sunburn. But the work didn't stop. We chopped. We served. We wiped down tables for people who had nowhere else to eat. I liked the rhythm of it. The service without the servitude. One man, Arthur, always sat near the exit. Vietnam vet, walked with a cane and a crooked smile. He looked at me one day and said, "You used to take care of someone. I can tell. You still walk like you're checking for them over your shoulder." I laughed. That obvious? It's not a bad thing. but you can stop checking. You're here now. On the first Friday of August, I got another letter. Handwritten. But this time, the paper was clean. No smudges. No panic. Just neat words, each one placed carefully, like bricks in a wall. Mom, there's a guy at the shop named Glenn. 42. Divorced. His daughter's 16. He's the one teaching me the ropes. Last week, his daughter came by with lunch and Glenn lit up like someone plugged him into the sun. I asked him, "You guys always been close like that?" And he said, "Hell no. I was a terrible dad. But I stopped trying to win her back and started just showing up. That's when she started sitting beside me again. I don't know if I'll ever get to sit beside you again, but I'll keep showing up. I'm not asking for anything, just letting you know I'm still here." Ethan, I read it twice. Then again. And then I did something I hadn't done in months. I called someone who hadn't heard from me since the day I left. My sister. Claire lived in Portland. Always had. We hadn't been close in years. Not because of a fight, just life. Distance. Schedules. Me being too consumed by motherhood to be anyone's sister. But when she picked up and heard my voice, she gasped. "Evelyn, Jesus, is this real?" "It's real," I said, my voice small. I just wanted to say I'm okay. We talked for an hour. About tomatoes. About music. About grief and womanhood and what happens when you raise a child into someone who stops seeing you as a person. "You did the right thing," she said. "Even if it broke me?" Sometimes broken is the first step to better. That night, I walked into the backyard garden and stood beneath the string lights Walt had helped me hang. He called them porch stars. "I hung 'em for hope," he'd said. "Hope you stay." I looked up at them now, blinking softly in the warm dark, and whispered, "Maybe I will." The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Not Ethan. Patricia. She introduced herself quickly. His girlfriend. Works at the shop. Short black hair. Tells Ethan when his boots stink. "I hope I'm not crossing a line," she said, her voice steady, kind. "But I think he needs you to see who he's become." I didn't speak. I let the silence say, "I'm listening." "He's not the same. He's up at 6. Sleeps early. Started helping at this after-school program the shop sponsors. He's learning to budget. Like, budget. Last week he returned a pair of sneakers he couldn't afford and said, 'I'd rather keep the lights on than look cool.'" She paused, then said the thing that shook me. "He's not just changing for you anymore. He's changing for himself." I swallowed hard. "Thank you, Patricia, for seeing him." "I see him," she said. "But I think he still needs you to believe in him." Click. That evening, I sat on my couch with the wristwatch in my palm. I thought of the boy who once cried when he lost his backpack in 3rd grade. The boy who ran into my room during storms. The boy who clung to me during Adam's funeral. And I asked myself a question I hadn't dared touch in months. Could I forgive him, without forgetting what it took to get here? I didn't have the answer. But I had a pen. And that night, for the first time, I wrote him back. "Ethan, thank you for your letters. Thank you for showing up, even when no one was clapping. I'm not ready to sit beside you again, but I see the chair being dusted off. Keep building. Not for me. For you." Mom, I mailed it the next day. And as I slid the envelope into the box, I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel shame. I felt like a bridge had started to rebuild. One careful plank at a time. Not rushed, not demanded, earned. There's no blueprint for reconciliation. No checklist. No perfect moment. Sometimes all you get is a knock on the door and the choice to open it. Or stay behind it forever. It came on a Tuesday. I was folding laundry in the late afternoon light, watching the breeze play with the curtains like a child tugging a mother's sleeve. The world felt calm, predictable, like a day that would pass without incident. Then there was a knock at the door. Not the soft kind from neighbors dropping off mail. It was patient. One knock. Pause. Another. I froze, pillowcase still in my hand. My heart, which hadn't raced in weeks, jolted to attention. I stepped toward the door slowly, my socks silent on the hardwood. Then I heard it. Not a voice. Not a name. Just breathing. And in that breath I knew. Ethan. I didn't open it right away. I stood on the other side, hand hovering over the doorknob, memories slamming through me like waves on rocks. Ethan at 2, throwing his cereal on the floor. Ethan at 9, with a scraped knee and a shaky apology. Ethan at 17, slamming his bedroom door in my face. Ethan at 28, wishing I would disappear. And now, 29, quiet, waiting. I opened the door. He looked older, not aged, but less shiny. Like the difference between a new penny and one that's passed through 100 hands. His jeans were clean but faded. His shirt tucked in, sleeves rolled. There was oil under his fingernails, sweat on his collar, and his eyes, those same hazel eyes I'd kissed goodnight 1,000 times, were soft. Not pleading, not entitled, just real. "Hi, Mom." I didn't speak, not because I didn't want to, but because my throat had closed around every word I might have said. So he spoke again. "I'm not here to stay. I'm just passing through town on my way to Knoxville. There's a conference for auto shop managers." He scratched his neck, nervous. I just wanted to give you this, and see your face. That's it." He handed me a small paper bag. Inside was a glass jar of homemade tomato jam, a recipe I used to make when money was tight, and flavor had to stretch further than groceries. "You said it made toast feel fancy," he said. I looked down at the jar, then back at him. "You remembered." His smile cracked. A little sad, a little proud. "I've been remembering a lot." I stepped aside. Didn't invite him in, but didn't close the door either. We stood there in the threshold like two people who used to know each other better than anyone, and now weren't sure how to breathe in the same room. He glanced past me into the apartment. "It's nice," he said. "It looks like you." "That's the idea," I replied. And then the silence stretched between us. Not awkward, not hostile, just heavy, like it carried everything we'd never said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "Before I go, I wanted to give you this. No pressure to read it now." I took it without opening it. He waited another beat, then added quietly, "I've been going to meetings." "What kind of meetings?" "Accountability group. Not like AA. Just men trying to unlearn some toxic crap. How we treat people, ourselves, our moms." That hit harder than I expected. "And I'm still with Patricia," he added. "We're figuring it out. She sounds like a good person." "She is, but she's not you." I met his eyes, and this time, I didn't look away. "I'm not who I used to be, Ethan." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking for her. I just wanted to meet the woman you are now." He didn't stay more than 10 minutes. Didn't ask to come in. Didn't try to hug me. When he left, he walked to an old gray pickup, clearly secondhand, dented at the bumper. But it ran, and it was his. As I watched him drive off, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still, like a chapter had closed without slamming shut. That night, I opened the envelope. Inside, one photo. Me, Ethan, and Adam. Ethan must have been 4. We were in a park, sitting on a blanket. Adam was holding the camera out selfie style. I looked tired, happy. Ethan was laughing, mouth open, mid-scream. Behind us, a sky full of summer, and written on the back, "I didn't realize until now. You were carrying both of us." The next day I showed the picture to Walt. He looked at it for a long time, nodded. "So, now what?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Are you thinking about letting him back in?" "I'm thinking about letting myself decide, without guilt." Walt smiled. Sounds like a mother who finally raised herself. That weekend I called Claire again. Told her about the visit, the jam, the photo, the letter. "What are you gonna do?" she asked. I looked out the window at the tomatoes, finally ripening in the heat. "I'm gonna let time do what it does best." "And what's that?" "Tell the truth. I didn't know if I was ready to enter his world again. But I knew I wasn't afraid of it anymore. And sometimes that's enough." It was Patricia who called me, not Ethan. It had been 2 weeks since his visit. I hadn't sent a message, hadn't called, hadn't mailed anything back. But I'd kept the jam in the fridge, unopened, like a sealed memory, or a second chance. "Ms. Hart," Patricia said, her voice cautious but clear. "I don't mean to intrude, but I wanted to invite you to something." I sat at the kitchen table, thumb running absently along the rim of my mug. The tomatoes were ripening fast now. I hadn't canned anything in years. I wasn't sure I remembered how. "It's not a holiday or anything," she continued. "Just dinner, with us, at our place. It's small but clean. He's proud of it." I didn't answer right away, because I knew what she wasn't saying. He wants you to see it, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. His, paid for, cleaned, maintained, lived in. Patricia filled the silence. "If it's too soon, I understand. No pressure." I surprised myself by answering quickly. "No, I'll come." He lived in a 2-room apartment above an old bike repair shop in the center of town. I took the bus. Not because I had to, because I wanted to arrive as a guest, not a mother reclaiming territory. The stairs creaked. The hallway smelled like oil and fresh paint. When the door opened, Ethan stood there in a clean black t-shirt, jeans and socks. He looked nervous, not scared, not guilty, just human. Patricia smiled from behind him, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Perfect timing. Dinner's just about ready." Ethan stepped aside. "Welcome," he said, voice even. The apartment was humble. A sagging couch, a thrifted table, a tiny kitchen tucked into the corner. But it was spotless. Books stacked neatly on the shelf. Shoes lined up by the door. The sink empty. The smell of garlic and rosemary in the air. He'd made roast chicken with carrots, mashed potatoes. A jar of my tomato jam on the counter, opened, half eaten. I noticed it immediately. "You tried it?" He nodded. "Yesterday, it still tastes like Sundays." We ate, and it wasn't awkward. We talked about the weather, the shop, Patricia's job in payroll, Walt's jazz gigs, the tomatoes. Every so often, Ethan would glance at me, like he was checking for landmines. But I gave him none. I just listened. And I watched. How he refilled Patricia's glass without being asked. How he cleared his own plate. How he looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but humbler, more grounded. After dinner, Patricia brought out a small dessert, chocolate pudding in little cups. "He made it," she said with a wink. "From scratch." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" Ethan laughed. "I YouTubed it. Took 3 tries." It was good. Not perfect. A little lumpy. But his. And that made it delicious. Later, Patricia offered to walk to the corner store. "Just a quick errand," she said, giving us space. I stood up to help with the dishes, but Ethan stopped me. "Don't. Please. Just sit." So I did. He turned to the sink, rinsed slowly, his back to me, and then softly. "Do you know the worst part?" I didn't answer. I let him speak. "I used to think your love was smothering, controlling. I told myself I needed space, freedom. I made you the villain so I could feel like a man." He turned. "Turns out being a man isn't about escaping love. It's about learning how to carry it, without crushing it." My eyes burned, but I said nothing. He walked to the table and sat across from me. "I don't expect anything from you, Mom. Not now. Not ever again. You gave me 28 years of everything. I just want you to know, whatever we are now, I'm okay with it. As long as it's real." I nodded, my throat too tight for words. And then finally I said, "Real is a good place to start." When I left, he walked me to the bus stop. No big goodbye. No tears. Just a quiet, "Thanks for coming." And "Take care of yourself." I sat by the window on the ride back, watching the streetlights blur past. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself hope. Not for things to go back, but for things to go forward, on firmer ground. When I got home, the apartment felt warmer. Not fuller, just peaceful. I sat at the table, took the unopened jar of jam from my fridge, twisted the lid, and spooned out one bite. Bright, sweet, sharp, like memory, like change, like something finally earned. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a heartbeat. Up, down, flat, up again. And just when you think you've arrived somewhere safe, life asks, "Can you stay soft even when the ground shakes again?" The first real test came on a Wednesday. I had just finished a volunteer shift at the community kitchen. The summer heat had broken, and a soft rain fell like a sigh over the sidewalks. I got home, took off my shoes, turned on the kettle. Then my phone rang. Not a text, not a voicemail, a real call. Ethan. My stomach twisted. I picked up. "Hey," he said, voice tight. Not scared, not calm either. "Can I ask you something weird?" "Of course." "How do you know if you're failing someone?" I sat down slowly. "Tell me what happened." He exhaled, shaky. "The shop laid off 3 guys this week. Business is slow. They kept me, but dropped my hours. I'm trying to stay afloat, but..." His voice broke, just for a second. "Patricia and I got into a fight last night. First big one. Over money. Over nothing. Over everything. I haven't felt this small in a while." Silence. Then with rawness I hadn't heard from him in years. "I thought I'd figured it out, Mom. I thought I was becoming someone. But now I feel like I'm back at zero." I closed my eyes. Not to avoid the pain. To remember it. I remembered the months after Adam died. How I couldn't look Ethan in the face some mornings, because I didn't know how I was going to feed him that week. I remembered sobbing into a bathroom sink while reheating canned soup for the 3rd night in a row. I remembered feeling exactly what Ethan was feeling now. "I know that place," I told him. "It's dark. It's lonely. And it lies." "Lies?" "It tells you that you're failing because you're struggling. But struggle isn't failure. It's proof that you're trying." He was quiet. Then, "How'd you do it? All those years?" I didn't think about the years. I just thought about today. What needed to get done. What had to be survived. One dish, one bill, one night. Later that week, I mailed him a package. Nothing big. A copy of The Old Man and the Sea. A note inside. "You're stronger than the tide. Keep rowing." A pack of homemade granola bars. 2 rolls of quarters for the laundromat. and $20 in an envelope labeled, "Emergency, not pizza." No lecture, no advice, just love. Quiet, practical, real. A few days later, Patricia called me. "I hope it's okay," she said. "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For not saving him. For letting him find his own way out." I paused. "That must be hard for you." "It is, but it's also beautiful. Watching someone choose to grow instead of collapse." "I see now what you did all those years. I don't think I fully understood it until I had a front row seat." She hesitated. "And I wanted you to know something. He told me he wants to marry me." My breath caught. "But only," she said, "after he feels like he can stand on his own 2 feet. He said he wants to come to you first. Not for permission. Just to show you who he's become." That night I stood by my garden, hands in the dirt. The plants were drying now. End of season. The tomatoes were starting to split. I pulled one off the vine, heavy and soft, and held it in my palm. So much care. So much time. And still, sometimes things burst open before they're ripe. But sometimes, that's when they're sweetest. A week later, Ethan called again. This time lighter. "We're okay," he said. "Patricia and me talked it out, set a plan. We're scaling back, canceling Netflix, eating more beans." I laughed. "Beans build character." He laughed too, then quiet again. "Mom? Yeah? Can I come visit? Your place this time. No expectations, just dinner." I looked around my apartment, small, quiet, filled with warmth and second chances. "Yes," I said, "you can come." And just like that, we'd come full circle. But not back to the beginning. Back to a new place entirely. He arrived the following Friday evening. No suitcase, just him, and a pie. "I made it," he said, half embarrassed. "Don't ask how long it took." I didn't ask. I just took the pie, led him inside, and set 2 plates on the table. We talked for hours. About the shop, about his coworkers, about dreams he didn't even know he had until he started building a life with his own hands. At one point, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny velvet box. "Don't worry," he said quickly. "It's not what you think." He opened it. Inside, a ring made from a washer and a bent nail, shaped into a circle. "I'm still saving for the real one, but I wanted you to see it first." I picked it up, held it to the light. Crude, sharp, strangely beautiful, like life, like him. Before he left, he hugged me. Not the kind you give out of obligation. The kind that says, "I know what I almost lost, and I don't take it for granted anymore." After he was gone, I wrote in my journal. 1 line only. Love doesn't mean never letting them fall. It means standing far enough back to let them land, and close enough to help them stand. And for the first time in almost 30 years, I believed I'd done it right, even when it hurt. Especially then. The hardest part of rebuilding isn't forgiveness. It's facing the moment you realize they might still need you, just not in the way you were used to. And the part of you that craved being essential doesn't quite know what to do with that. It happened over something small. They always do. Ethan had come over again. 3rd Friday in a row. We were chopping vegetables side by side in my tiny kitchen, making soup. It had become a quiet ritual. Just us. No noise, no expectations. But that night, I said something I hadn't meant to say. "I'm glad you're figuring things out now. Just wish it hadn't taken so long." I didn't say it like a knife. More like a sigh. But Ethan stiffened. "Yeah," he muttered. "Me too." I tried to recover. "I didn't mean it like that." "I know," he said, not looking up. but you kind of did. We ate in silence. The soup was fine. The silence wasn't. Afterward, he started washing dishes without a word. Not out of anger, just retreat. Like a man who'd learned not to push too hard against the person who once held all the weight of his world. And that's when I felt it. The ache. Not guilt. Not shame. Something more complicated. A strange, sudden grief. Not for what we lost, but for the part of me that still wanted to be needed the way I used to be. After he left, I sat in the living room with the lamp off. Just the wristwatch ticking on my end table. The jam jar still half full in the fridge. The books he'd borrowed and returned without a word. That was what love looked like now. Borrowed, returned. Quiet. But also distant. 2 days later, he called. Not to apologize, to ask for help. It startled me. "Patricia's aunt passed," he said. "She's flying to Albuquerque tomorrow. I want to go with her, but I don't have the money for the flight." I waited for the ask. It never came. He just said, "I wanted to tell you, because part of me still feels like I should be able to fix everything, but I can't." I exhaled into the phone, then asked, "How much is the ticket?" He paused. "Mom, how much? 260 note? I'll send it to you tonight." Silence. Then, "Thank you." Then more softly, "I'm not failing, you know. I'm just still learning how to stand on ground that isn't yours." That night, I sat at my desk and pulled out my journal. Wrote one line. Motherhood doesn't end. It just gets quieter. And if you're not careful, you'll miss the sound of it. A week passed before he called again. But when he did, it wasn't from his apartment. It was from a motel room. "Albuquerque didn't go as planned," he said. He sounded tired. Not broken, just tired in a way I recognized. The kind that only comes when grief hits you sideways. She cried a lot. Her aunt basically raised her. There was no will. The house is a mess. I didn't know what to do. "You did what you were supposed to," I said. "You showed up." He sniffed. "That's not what I used to do." "No, but it's what you do now." A long pause. Then, "Patricia said something last night. Said I was becoming the kind of man she could count on. But she wondered if I'd ever stop needing to prove I wasn't who I used to be." That hit me harder than I expected. Because I'd wondered the same thing. About myself. When he got back to town, he came over again. He didn't bring pie, or jam, or apologies. Just himself. And sat at my kitchen table like someone who belonged there, but wasn't trying to own it. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. "I've been writing," he said. "It's not much. Just stuff I wish someone had told me when I was younger." I opened it. It was titled, "A Man is Not a House." Below it, in his uneven handwriting, were short lines. He cannot offer shelter if he's full of holes. He cannot keep people warm if he's always waiting to be repaired. He must fix his foundation before he invites anyone to stay. He must pay his own light bill. A man is not a house. But if he is lucky, someone will plant flowers on his front porch someday. I read it twice, once with my eyes, once with my whole chest. Then I set it down and said, "You are not who you were." And he said, "Neither are you." That night I let him wash the dishes alone, and I sat, and I listened, and I let the quiet fill the room like it used to when he was a baby, asleep in his crib, while I folded laundry and whispered to the walls, "Please, God, let him become more than I can even imagine." And now he had. Not because I carried him, but because I let go. You spend your whole life raising someone, thinking the final test is if they survive without you. But the real test is quieter. Can you let them thrive without needing to be their reason why? The invitation came on a Tuesday in late spring. Thick cream paper, handwritten address, no return name. But I knew the handwriting, knew the care behind it. I sat on the couch, wristwatch ticking gently beside me, and opened it with both hands like it might vanish if I breathed too hard. Inside, you're invited. Ethan and Patricia, May 18th. Small backyard. Big hearts, just family, just love. There was no RSVP line, just a note at the bottom. Only if you want to. Only if it's peace, not pressure. Either way, thank you for getting us here. I read it 3 times, then set it down. Not because I didn't know my answer, but because I wanted to feel it. Fully. Quietly. Yes. The ceremony was held in the backyard of their apartment building. Nothing extravagant. Folding chairs, wildflowers in mason jars. A local guitarist playing Here Comes the Sun with his eyes closed. Ethan stood at the front, in a navy suit that fit a little tight across the shoulders. He looked grown. Not aged, but grounded, planted. Patricia wore a knee-length cream dress and boots. She walked down the grass aisle like she'd done this in a dream once. And now the dream had caught up to her. I sat in the 3rd row, between a mechanic named Glenn and an older woman with a tight bun who made the best lemon squares in North Carolina. No one knew I was the mother, and I didn't need them to. When Ethan saw me, he smiled. Not a show, not a thank you, just recognition. Like we were 2 people who had walked through fire and come out scarred, but not burned away. After the ceremony, there were grilled cheese sandwiches and iced tea. They danced barefoot in the grass. He stepped on her toes. She laughed so hard she snorted. I hadn't heard that sound from a woman in a long time. Joy, unfiltered. Later, Ethan came to me. No speeches, no spotlight, just a folded napkin in his hand. Inside it, a tiny metal washer. Plain, circular. I kept it, he said. I looked up. The ring, he explained. The one I made you. The fake one. From the shop. He nodded toward his hand, now wearing a simple gold band. I gave her the real thing today. But I wanted you to have the first one. The one that meant I was becoming. I held it. It was cold. And heavy for its size. Like memory. Like consequence. Like forgiveness you don't ask for, but earn. He hugged me. No words. Just arms around my back, his chin resting on my shoulder. For a second, I remembered what it felt like to hold him when he was small. The way he used to cling like he didn't know where he ended and I began. Now? He let go first, and that somehow meant everything. After the wedding, I didn't go back to the old life. There was nothing to return to. I went forward. I planted basil and thyme in new pots on the windowsill. Started volunteering at the library for reading hour. Walt passed away in June, in his sleep, quietly. At his funeral, the jazz trio played his favorite, Ain't Misbehavin'. He would have grinned at that. I keep the porch lights up. He's stars, he called them. And sometimes I sit under them with a mug of tea, watching the wind move through the garden. And I think, this is what peace sounds like. Ethan calls once a week now. Not out of duty, out of rhythm. Last week he said they're thinking of getting a dog. Patricia wants a golden retriever. I want a mutt. We'll see who wins. I laughed. You already know who's gonna win. He sighed. Yeah, but I like pretending I have a say. A month ago, I got another envelope. No invitation this time. Just a photo. Ethan and Patricia sitting on the porch steps, holding a newborn wrapped in a quilt. No big captions. just a single word on the back. Grace. I stared at it for a long time. Longer than I've stared at anything in years. And I didn't cry. I just smiled. Not because I was proud, but because I was finally at peace with not being the center of it all. Last week I visited them. Not to rescue. Not to teach. Just to hold the baby. Patricia handed her to me carefully, like she was handing me the future. And when I held Grace, I whispered something only she could hear. You're already more loved than most people ever get. And if you're lucky, really lucky, you'll mess up and be loved anyway. Ethan watched us from the kitchen, arms crossed, quiet smile on his face. I didn't need to say anything. He already knew that he'd become the man I prayed for. Only when I stopped being the one he prayed to. Now, my name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 63. And I'm not someone's mother first. I'm not someone's past. I'm a woman who lived, and lost, and let go. And in the letting go, learned to live again. If this story touched something in you, tell me where you're listening from. Drop your city in the comments. And if you'd like more stories like this, the kind that burn slow but stay, you know what to do. Because sometimes the healing starts with someone else's truth. Whispered out loud.